Leach back here at Benzinga's Cannabis Capital Conference in beautiful Chicago. And I'm here with Charles Alovisetti.
Perfect.
See, I know that it's a skill to get that name right. It's the harder the name, the more beautiful the name.
That's true. I think it's also it's deceptively easy. It looks intimidating. There's a lot of vowels in there, but there's no sounds that all the sounds exist in English. You know, there's no tricky sounds.
It makes it more fun to do it.
It's true.
Now, you are a partner of Vicente LLP.
Yeah.
It's great to be here with you. Before we get into anything, I just wanted to ask you about your feeling about the vibe of this conference, because I was here for the first time last year. I was blown away. It just feels the energy here about doing good things in this space is endless to me. I just wonder what it's like for you.
I should probably go to one of these panels to see what it's like. But I find like the value of these conferences is talking to people.
Sure, of course.
I can always watch the panels later or read whatever people write. I think determined, I would say, would be the vibe. I think everyone accepts it's not going to be easy going forward, but that's not going to deter people.
No.
I mean, it was tough. It's been tough the whole time. I think there was a brief period of time where things were pretty easy, which I think deceived some people. But, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, things were tough too. So
yeah. You know what they say, nothing good is easy.
That's true.
Let's talk about Vicente LLP and what the mission is right now, what you guys are all about.
Well, I mean, our mission has really been to push forward legalization through, responsible business. And, we're a law firm, and so we do that by providing advice to our clients, business, regulatory, litigation, try and meet the needs of our clients where they are, across the country, and very focused on cannabis, hemp, and psychedelics. And then, as we see the cannabis industry evolving, right? So we evolve with the industry,
of course.
Right? So like one of the latest permutations is hemp beverages, right? So that's become a major growth area for us. We had a bunch of people leave the firm to go be in-house general counsels of hemp beverage companies. So, there's always something new.
Well, let's talk about something that obviously apropos for we're here today. Last week, some news out of Washington that, is a little, speaking of daunting to some people. I know that, last year a big topic of discussion was legalization. Now, in some ways, it almost seems like we might be going backwards, but I know that something that means a lot to you is responsible hemp legislation. Let's talk about where we're at, what came out last week for those that don't know, and where we hopefully could be going.
Well, yeah, I mean, the language is bad, but, I think people need to, we've been through this before. I mean, there was the Miller Amendment last year, which would have effectively done the same thing. And, it's something they're going to have to pass on with the 60 votes. This is not reconciliation, so You're going to need to have support.
That's an important point, by the way.
Right, which means that, it doesn't take that many people to say no to get a change in the language. So we're a long way from final language, so I think everyone's got to sort of do their part and to speak up and to be involved in the lobbying process, I think. To me, it's like, I think the industry should look at the 2018 Farm Bill as, a major step in the right direction. I mean, it's a step towards legalization, towards normalization, which is what we're all working for. Now, obviously, I think part of the problem is you had total lack of regulations, which creates things that, why are they so mad in Texas? Well, they're selling 500 milligram gummies. They're not age gating to children. It's like, well, what do you expect? Of course there's going to be pushback, right? So I think, but of course the answer to sort of the absence of regulations is not a total ban. It's responsible regulation, and that's sort of been our kind of lodestar since the beginning, is that it should be, we should treat cannabis like alcohol. And a total ban, obviously, we saw what happened.
We saw it during Prohibition.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't really work. Rich people still got access to alcohol.
So weed out of the basement.
Yeah, exactly. It made Al Capone super rich. A lot of people died. It was a pretty. I think people universally agree that alcohol prohibition was a pretty bad idea.
Well, Charlie, let me ask you this. You're obviously a super intelligent lawyer and human being. It seems obvious to me. I'm not a politician. I mean, I know the law a little bit, not obviously like your level, but I know common sense. The majority of the country is supportive of cannabis. The majority of the country is supportive of business. the majority, well, I mean, most of the country wants America to continue to grow. This is a space that can help that. Why? And I understand that we've got some politicians that are super archaic. All due respect to them. You can do whatever you want. People elected them. I get that. I respect that. To me, and you explained that so beautifully, not just responsible legislation, but common sense legislation seems so obvious to me. From your perspective in your field, why is it not getting done?
I mean, I think part of the problem is there's still a prohibitionist mindset in a lot of legislators, which is like, I think, to me, it's, I think at this point, I think the analogies between cannabis, and by cannabis I mean both hemp and marijuana,
right.
The whole
the
thing.
Whole umbrella.
It's one plant. Is a lot like alcohol in the sense that it's deeply ingrained into American culture, right? At this point in time, right? Like, we're now, the second or third generation that's grown up with, people grew up being around it. It's part of our culture. It's part of American culture at this point, right?
People are smoking on the street outside the hotel and it's legal.
Yeah. It's like the only people for whom it isn't part of their culture at all are, people that are pretty, maybe in their 70s and up, even though, like, I would say 70s and up, like, there's my parents. My parents came up in the 70s. It's like, it was not, so it's not going anywhere. I think the choice that legislators need to understand is that it's not going anywhere, and you can prohibit it, and then you get a prohibition effect, which is it goes underground. Right. It's dominated by illicit organizations, cartels, probably not the Sicilian mafia this time around, probably the cartels, but, you've seen a lot of reports out about, like, the Chinese organized crime dominating activities in places like Maine. So that's one option. The second option is it's licensed, it's regulated, it's run by sort of responsible businesses. I think they're living under a delusion that there's this third option out there, which is we write a law that says it's illegal, and then it just goes away. And
like I said, common sense, that's the opposite.
And I just don't think I think people need to understand that's not a reality. Now, I think, how do you convince regulators of that, of legislators of that? I think, and something we got to work on as an industry is we need to approach them with, they're going to say, well, where's your evidence for that, right? And I think you point at some reporting that's coming, like the recent reporting out of Maine, how the caregiver market in Maine has become to be dominated by, Chinese organized crime. Because at the end of the day, like, illicit markets are not going to be run by mom and pop organizations. There's economies of scale on the organized crime side. So I think a lot of it is education, and then I think the industry has to acknowledge that, yes, I mean, listen, it's a drug, and drugs have downsides, right? You shouldn't go out there and try and convince someone that this is a drug that has no downsides, right? I mean, I think it makes you less credible. Yeah, you can absolutely smoke too much weed. You can absolutely, reduce your ambition in life, or, there are negative effects to consuming cannabis. But the question is, what's the response to that? And then who should make the decision?
That's the big question.
Right. So I think, right now, so it's a collective action problem as well, right? Where the industry needs to come together on this, and it's tough because they're fully aware that there are different points of view on hemp. There's some people that would love to see the loophole closed entirely.
Right.
But I think that's a mistake, because I think the cannabis industry should also sell hemp. I don't think all products should be sold outside of a dispensary, but I certainly think low-dose products, provided it's age-gated, tested, regulated, I don't think they all need to be sold into a dispensary. I mean, that's why I love beverages, especially as a crossover point, because if you look at dispensary sales, beverages are a very, very small percentage of dispensary sales. And if you had beverages go entirely outside of the licensed cannabis system, it's not really going to hurt the cannabis industry. And if you do look at what beverages they are selling, it tends to be pretty high dose.
Right.
And that's not going to be. I don't think that should be sold.
It's all about a balance.
I think only low dose stuff should be sold in liquor stores. I mean, we can debate what low dose means, but certainly not 100 milligrams.
Beautiful stuff by you. By the way, you brought up a fascinating point. So if Capone was like, kind of the guy during alcohol prohibition, who would it be during cannabis? Snoop Dogg? Who would be the Al Capone of weed?
I was good. Well, I mean, Snoop Dogg has legal products,
right?
He's had a number of products. I think he just launched a hemp line of products. I guess who's the Al Capone of cannabis? It's probably someone whose name we don't know right now. My guess is
it's someone in the shadows, probably.
Yeah, it's someone who's definitely in the shadows for sure.
But before I let you go, and once again, I can't thank you enough for your time, and you really brought out so many important things that I think a lot of people are going to really appreciate, you discussing. Let's look forward here. I mean, last year there were, even with some frustration, like you mentioned this year as well, there's a lot of hope. I felt that. Is there hope from your point of view? You're obviously a legal scholar, so you know the legalities and legislation, like you explained. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Is there hope?
Well, I mean, if I was, I guess by nature and by training, I'm a fairly sort of negative person because I'm an attorney. But I think the hopeful thing is you look at the total addressable market, right? If you look at it as like the cannabinoid market, right, which consists of state licensed cannabis, hemp, the illicit market, and I suppose home grow as well. But home grow is probably pretty small. That keeps growing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exponentially.
And it's a huge market. It's global. But the other thing to understand is the U.S. could entirely ban cannabis. It's going to slow down the global cannabis growth. It's not going to stop it. It'll occur overseas. Canada's market, which has suffered significant, it's doing better now. Listen, with markets adjust, right? So if you oversupply, eventually it will resolve itself as long as it's well regulated. I think the challenge is that people have a myopic view of the industry and they just look at one segment of it, when its reality is like the demand can shift into these other areas, right? It can go into hemp, it can go into illicit markets. So I think that I would just say, if you want it to be, the good news is that Americans like to get high.
that is a fact, my friend.
Right, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So it's just a question of who's gonna do that. And my controversial opinion is it should be licensed, regulated, tested, kept away from children, packaged well, labeled well, and sold accordingly. I just think that legal cannabis can be part of sort of a law and order message, right? And that's what I would say to Republican legislators is like, listen, it's going to be here no matter what. Wouldn't you rather it be sort of regulated and controlled?
That wasn't too negative an answer.
So I just step forward for me.
All right, Charlie Alovisetti.
Thank you very much.
Partner of Vicente LLP. Fascinating discussion. Really appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thank you.